A peaceful town in Florida was shaken when a brutal crime came to light. Lanny Roberto Kanga, a talented artist and beloved member of the Neptune Beach community, was found murdered in her backyard studio. Known for her vibrant sculptures and paintings, Lanny was someone who brought joy to everyone around her. But her tragic death revealed a web of hidden secrets that stunned the town. At the center of this story is a family: Lanny, her husband Paul Kanga, and her 18-year-old stepson Chucky. On the surface, they appeared to be an ordinary household, but the reality was far more complicated. Behind closed doors, tensions had been building for years, and those tensions would eventually lead to an unthinkable act of violence. How did a close-knit family end up at the center of such a tragedy? What could drive someone to commit such a crime? To understand what happened, we need to start with who Lanny was and the life she shared with her family. This is where the story begins. Lanny Roberto Kanga was a 42-year-old artist whose life revolved around creativity and community. She lived in Neptune Beach, Florida, a quiet coastal town known for its charm and annual flower festival. Lanny was a gifted sculptor and painter, admired for her work that often reflected the natural beauty of Florida. She sold her art at local fairs and was a regular face at community events, where her warm personality made her a favorite among neighbors. At home, Lanny's life was more complex. She had been married to Paul Kanga, a retired Army officer, for 10 years. Despite their 20-year age difference, their relationship appeared stable. Paul was deeply supportive of Lanny's career, and the two shared a love for quiet evenings and gardening. However, her relationship with her stepson, Chucky, was much more strained. Chucky had lost his biological mother when he was just a child, and though Lanny tried to be a positive influence in his life, they often struggled to connect. Lanny wasn't just an artist. She was also a volunteer at the local library and an active participant in neighborhood projects. Her dedication to the community and her love for nature were evident in everything she did. Yet, even with her positive outlook, cracks in her personal life were beginning to show. Tensions within her family were growing, and her efforts to keep things harmonious would soon take a heartbreaking turn. Lanny's life was full of potential, but as we'll see, the dynamics in her family would set the stage for a tragedy no one could have imagined. In the weeks before her death, Lanny Roberto Kanga seemed focused on her work and her family. She had been working on a new series of sculptures inspired by Florida's wildlife, a project she was eager to display at the upcoming Neptune Beach Flower Festival. This event was one of the town's most cherished traditions, and Lanny's art was always a highlight. Amid her artistic pursuits, Lanny also hoped to strengthen her strained relationship with Chucky, her 18-year-old stepson. She had planned a family vacation, a rare opportunity for them to spend quality time together. For Lanny, this trip was about building bridges and finding common ground with Chucky. However, despite her best intentions, there was an underlying tension in the household that made these efforts more difficult than she let on. Lanny's relationship with Chucky had always been challenging. As someone who had lost his mother at a young age, Chucky often kept his emotions bottled up, and his behavior could be unpredictable. Still, Lanny believed in giving him the benefit of the doubt and tried to create a peaceful home environment. To outsiders, Lanny's life seemed idyllic. She was working on exciting projects, actively involved in her community, and preparing for family bonding time. But behind the scenes, emotions were boiling over. What she didn't realize was that her efforts to bring her family closer would soon collide with a hidden side of Chucky's life, one that would take a tragic and violent turn. The morning of April 12, 2022, started like any other in Neptune Beach. The weather was cool, the sun was shining, and the small town was waking up to its usual quiet routine. But everything changed when 15-year-old Pauline Gurman, a neighbor of the Kangas, decided to visit Lanny's art studio to discuss her ongoing true crime novel. Pauline had often sought Lanny's advice on her writing and looked up to her as both a mentor and a friend. When Pauline knocked on the front door of the Kanga home and got no answer, she walked around to the backyard studio where Lanny often spent her mornings. She immediately noticed something unusual. The door to the studio was slightly open. Curious but cautious, she stepped inside, only to find a scene that would haunt her forever. Lanny's body was on the floor, surrounded by shattered glass and broken sculptures. The room showed clear signs of a violent struggle. Terrified, Pauline ran outside and called 911. Following the operator's instructions, she waited outside the studio until the police arrived. Her calm actions under pressure helped ensure that the scene remained undisturbed, allowing investigators to collect crucial evidence. As word of the tragedy spread, the normally serene neighborhood became a hub of police activity. Neighbors gathered nearby, stunned and confused, as crime scene investigators began their work. The peaceful image of Neptune Beach was shattered in an instant, and questions about what could have led to such violence began to swirl. The discovery of Lanny's body marked the start of an intense investigation, one that would reveal a tangled web of family secrets and a tragedy no one could have anticipated. When police arrived at Lanny Roberto Kanga's art studio, they were met with a chaotic and disturbing scene. Broken sculptures and shards of glass were scattered across the floor, and a heavy blood-stained sculpture was identified as the murder weapon. The violent nature of the crime indicated that this was not a random act, it was deeply personal. Detectives Richard Fulkerson and Julia Barrett, known for their meticulous work, led the investigation. They quickly began collecting evidence, including blood samples, strands of hair, and a torn piece of fabric found near the body. A broken piece of jewelry lying amidst the debris was also tagged as potentially significant. Every detail in the room told a story of a struggle that had escalated into deadly violence. As part of their initial steps, the detectives conducted interviews with neighbors to gather information about the Kanga household. People described Lanny as kind and creative, but mentioned that there were occasional tensions within the family. This feedback added to the growing complexity of the case. The investigation soon extended to the Kanga home itself. Detectives searched for anything that could provide insight into the events leading up to the murder. While no immediate evidence stood out, it was clear that the answer to what happened would likely come from within the family. The police were determined to follow every lead, and the evidence they collected would eventually point them in a direction no one in the quiet town could have predicted. As the investigation deepened, it became clear that this crime was not just about violence, it was about secrets and betrayal, hidden in plain sight. 3 days after the investigation began, detectives made a breakthrough that would completely shift the focus of the case. While searching through Lanny's art materials, they discovered a stack of hidden letters. The contents of these letters were shocking. They revealed an intimate and secret relationship between Lanny and someone close to her family. The tone of the letters hinted at a relationship that had turned obsessive and complicated. The revelation led detectives to dig deeper into Lanny's personal life. They traced phone records and analyzed text messages, which confirmed an ongoing secret communication. It wasn't long before they identified the other person involved in the relationship, Chucky, Lanny's 18-year-old stepson. This discovery changed the direction of the investigation entirely. The relationship was far from just a family matter. It appeared to be central to the motive behind the crime. Interviews with people close to the Kangas painted a clearer picture. Some neighbors mentioned noticing unusual behavior from Chucky, while others expressed shock at the revelation. Chucky was brought in for questioning, and his initial responses were evasive. However, as more evidence came to light, including texts and call logs that tied him to Lanny in unexpected ways, his involvement became harder to deny. The investigation now had a prime suspect, but proving the connection between the secret relationship and the violent crime would require uncovering even more evidence. This shocking turn of events not only stunned the community, but also revealed the depth of the emotional turmoil that had been hidden within the Kanga family. The investigation was no longer just about finding who committed the crime, it was about understanding why. As the evidence against Chucky mounted, the pressure on him intensified. Investigators found his fingerprints on the blood-stained sculpture that had been used as the murder weapon, and DNA evidence placed him at the scene of the crime. The facts were undeniable, but detectives needed more than evidence, they needed a confession. During his interrogation, Chucky initially denied any involvement in Lanny's death. He claimed he had no knowledge of what happened that morning and insisted he was innocent. However, as detectives presented the overwhelming evidence, his demeanor began to shift. Faced with no way out, Chucky broke down and admitted to the crime. In his confession, Chucky revealed the full extent of his obsession with Lanny. He described how their secret relationship had developed and how he had hoped it would allow them to be together. When Lanny ended the relationship and made it clear that she wanted to focus on her family and career, Chucky felt rejected and angry. His emotions spiraled out of control, leading to the violent confrontation in her studio. On April 20th, 2022, just 8 days after the murder, Chucky was officially arrested. The news of his confession shocked the community. People who had known the Kanga family struggled to reconcile the image of the quiet young man with the horrific crime he had committed. The story of the murder quickly spread, leaving Neptune Beach in disbelief. Chucky's arrest marked a turning point in the case, but it was only the beginning of a long journey for the Kanga family and the community. The focus now shifted to the trial, where the legal system would determine the consequences of his actions. Meanwhile, the emotional fallout from Chucky's confession rippled through the town, leaving questions about how such a tragedy could have been prevented. The trial of Chucky Kanga began in November 2023 and drew intense attention from both the local community and beyond. The prosecution presented a straightforward case, backed by overwhelming evidence. They laid out the timeline of events, the forensic findings, and Chucky's confession. Chucky's fingerprints on the murder weapon and DNA evidence from the crime scene left no doubt about his involvement. In court, the prosecution argued that Chucky's actions were driven by jealousy and obsession. They described how his relationship with Lanny became a toxic fixation, leading to a tragic breaking point when she chose to end it. They painted a clear picture of a crime born out of uncontrolled emotions and a refusal to accept rejection. The defense, on the other hand, focused on Chucky's emotional instability and traumatic past. They highlighted the loss of his biological mother and the challenges he faced growing up, arguing that these factors contributed to his fragile mental state. The defense team urged the jury to consider these circumstances when deciding his fate, presenting him as a troubled young man who needed help more than punishment. After several days of testimony, the jury deliberated and found Chucky guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict left the community divided. Some felt the punishment was fair, while others believed it was too lenient for such a brutal crime. Many questioned whether the outcome would bring closure to those affected by the tragedy. For the Kanga family, the trial brought no real relief. Paul Kanga, Lanny's grieving husband and Chucky's father, was left to grapple with a devastating loss and the betrayal of his son. The trial marked the end of the legal process, but for those closest to the case, it was only the beginning of a long and painful journey to find some semblance of peace. With Chucky behind bars, the community of Neptune Beach turned its attention to healing and reflecting on the lessons learned from this heartbreaking story. The trial may have brought justice, but the emotional scars it left behind would take much longer to heal. The murder of Lanny Roberto Kanga sent shockwaves through Neptune Beach, a town known for its tight-knit community and peaceful way of life. The tragedy not only shattered the Kanga family, but also left a lasting impact on the neighbors and friends who had admired Lanny and her work. As the news spread, the town was forced to confront difficult questions about family dynamics, mental health, and the warning signs that had gone unnoticed. In the wake of the crime, community leaders and local organizations took action to address the emotional toll the event had taken. Mental health workshops and conflict resolution programs were introduced in schools, encouraging open communication and emotional awareness among students. These initiatives aim to create a space where young people could discuss their struggles before they escalated into something more serious. Local support groups for families dealing with loss or mental health challenges also gained traction. The tragedy became a catalyst for conversations about the importance of seeking help and recognizing when someone might be struggling. While these efforts couldn't undo what had happened, They were seen as a step toward preventing similar incidents in the future. The town's residents, still grappling with the grief of losing Lanny, found ways to honor her memory through these initiatives. Her love for the arts and her dedication to the community inspired events and programs that aimed to promote creativity and emotional well-being. Slowly but surely, Neptune Beach began to heal, though the scars of the tragedy would never fully fade. The community's response reflected its resilience, as residents came together to support one another in the face of such a profound loss. While the story of Lanny's life and death remained a painful reminder of what can happen when issues go unaddressed, it also became a source of motivation to build a stronger, more compassionate future for everyone in Neptune Beach. For Paul Kanga, the aftermath of his wife Lanny's murder was a devastating double blow. Not only had he lost the woman he loved, but the discovery that his own son, Chucky, was responsible for the crime left him shattered. Paul, once a strong and composed retired Army officer, found himself grappling with grief, betrayal, and unanswered questions. The home that once held memories of Lanny's laughter and creativity became a constant reminder of the tragedy. Unable to cope with the emotional weight, Paul made the difficult decision to leave Neptune Beach. He moved to Charleston, South Carolina, hoping that a fresh start in a new place might help him heal. But even in Charleston, Paul struggled to find peace. Memories of Lanny and the events that tore his family apart lingered with him every day. To deal with his grief, Paul turned to volunteer work. He joined support groups for families affected by violence, where he found solace in connecting with others who had faced similar losses. Paul's military background gave him a sense of purpose, and he channeled his energy into helping others rebuild their lives, even as he struggled to rebuild his own. The relationship between Paul and Chucky remained strained and distant. Their rare conversations were filled with tension and unresolved pain, as Paul wrestled with feelings of anger and guilt. Though he remained Chucky's father, the bond between them had been irreparably damaged. Despite this, Paul held on to a sliver of hope that his son might one day find redemption. Through his volunteer work and efforts to honor Lanny's memory, Paul found small moments of comfort. Yet, the loss of his wife and the betrayal of his son left a permanent scar. While he moved forward, Paul's journey remained a testament to the enduring challenges of coping with unimaginable tragedy. His story became one of quiet resilience, as he sought to create meaning in the shadow of an irreparable loss. Chucky Kanga's life changed drastically after his sentencing. At just 18 years old, he entered a state prison to serve 15 years for the murder of his stepmother, Lanny Roberto Kanga. Prison life was a stark contrast to the world he had known, and adjusting to his new reality proved to be a significant challenge. Initially, Chucky was withdrawn and uncooperative, spending most of his time in isolation. However, as weeks turned into months, he began participating in counseling sessions offered by the facility. The therapy sessions, aimed at addressing his emotional instability and past traumas, became a turning point. Chucky started to reflect on his actions and the pain he had caused, not just to Lanny and Paul, but also to himself. Music became an unexpected outlet for Chucky. He joined a prison program that allowed inmates to learn musical instruments and write songs. This creative expression helped him process his emotions and provided a constructive way to channel his regrets. Over time, Chucky began composing songs that touched on themes of loss, guilt, and the impact of his actions. Education also played a role in Chucky's rehabilitation. He completed his high school diploma and enrolled in prison courses focused on emotional intelligence and conflict resolution. While these efforts didn't erase his crime, they gave him tools to better understand his feelings and interactions with others. Despite his gradual progress, Chucky's life behind bars remained difficult. The weight of his crime and the stigma associated with it followed him, even within the prison walls. While some inmates and counselors saw his attempts to change as genuine, others remained skeptical of his motivations. Chucky's time in prison became a mix of reflection, small achievements, and ongoing challenges. His journey highlighted the complexities of rehabilitation and the long path toward personal accountability. Whether his efforts would lead to meaningful change remained to be seen, but they marked the beginning of a slow and difficult process of self-discovery. Among the many people affected by Lanny Roberto Kanga's tragic death, Pauline German's life took a unique and unexpected turn. At just 15 years old, she had been the first to discover Lanny's body in the art studio. What began as a routine visit to discuss her true crime novel became a traumatic moment that would forever change her perspective. Pauline cooperated fully with the police investigation, providing detailed accounts of what she saw and the events leading up to her discovery. Her interest in true crime, which had once been a hobby, now felt far more personal. Investigators initially viewed her as a valuable witness, but her detailed observations of the Kanga family's dynamics raised questions. Detectives searched her home, finding notebooks filled with notes about her neighbors, though nothing incriminating was discovered. Despite her innocence in the crime, Pauline struggled with the weight of the experience. She later channeled her emotions into completing her novel, which was inspired in part by the tragedy she had witnessed. While the book blended fictional elements with real-life influences, Pauline approached the subject with caution, aware of the ethical responsibilities that came with writing about such a sensitive topic. When the book was published, it sparked mixed reactions. Some readers praised Pauline for bringing attention to the complexities of human emotions and relationships, while others criticized her for profiting from a community tragedy. To address these concerns, Pauline donated a portion of her book's profits to local mental health initiatives, turning her work into a platform for positive change. Pauline's personal growth didn't stop there. She became an advocate for mental health awareness and family support systems, using her story to inspire conversations about the importance of recognizing emotional struggles. Her efforts resonated with many, especially younger audiences, who saw her as a relatable voice for addressing difficult issues. Over time, Pauline transitioned into a career as an author, focusing on stories that explored the human condition with depth and sensitivity. Her role in the Kanga case marked the beginning of a journey that combined healing, advocacy, and storytelling, allowing her to make sense of a tragedy that had once turned her world upside down. Even in death, Lanny Roberto Kanga's work continued to touch the lives of many. Her vibrant sculptures and intricate paintings, inspired by the natural beauty of Florida, became symbols of her creativity and passion for life. After her tragic passing, the community of Neptune Beach rallied to preserve and honor her artistic legacy. One of Lanny's most cherished pieces, a sculpture inspired by Florida's coastal landscapes, was donated to the Neptune Beach Public Library. Displayed in a prominent section of the building, it became a place for residents to reflect on her life and the impact she had on the town. Flowers and handwritten notes were often left near the sculpture, showing the depth of affection and respect people held for her. Her other works found homes in local galleries, public spaces, and private collections, ensuring her art continued to be appreciated by a wider audience. Beyond the physical beauty of her creations, Lanny's art came to represent resilience and hope for the community. It was a reminder that even in the face of tragedy, the beauty she brought to the world could not be forgotten. The Flower Festival, one of Neptune Beach's most celebrated traditions, also became a platform to honor Lanny's memory. Each year, a portion of the festival was dedicated to showcasing her works and promoting local artists, a fitting tribute to someone who had given so much to the town's creative spirit. For Paul Kanga, Lanny's art provided a bittersweet connection to her. While the memories of her loss were painful, her works gave him moments of comfort, reminding him of the passion and light she brought into his life. Through her art, Lanny's presence remained strong, offering solace not just to Paul but to everyone who had admired her. Lanny's legacy was not just about the art she created, but also about the inspiration she left behind. Her story motivated many in the community to embrace their own creativity and to support initiatives that encouraged artistic expression. In this way, her life continued to have a lasting and meaningful impact on Neptune Beach. After serving his 15-year sentence, Chucky Kanga was released from prison into a world that had moved on without him. The young man who entered prison full of anger and confusion was now older, quieter, and reportedly more introspective. Despite his efforts to change, Chucky's reintegration into society was anything but simple. He chose to settle in a distant town far from Neptune Beach, hoping to escape the stigma attached to his name. Keeping a low profile, he avoided public attention and refused interviews, preferring to focus on rebuilding his life out of the spotlight. Those close to him described his post-prison life as reclusive, with Chucky spending much of his time working on his music and writing skills he had developed during his incarceration. Chucky occasionally contributed anonymously to mental health programs, sharing his experiences to help others recognize the dangers of unchecked emotions and unresolved trauma. These contributions, though quiet, reflected a desire to use his past as a cautionary tale, even if he preferred not to take public credit for his efforts. Despite these steps toward redemption, Chucky remained haunted by the crime he committed and the lives it destroyed. The weight of public judgment and the damage to his family's reputation continued to follow him, making his journey toward normalcy an uphill battle. In the rare moments when Chucky spoke to his father, Paul Kanga, their conversations were strained and brief. The bond between them, already fragile, seemed unlikely to fully recover. Yet, Chucky expressed regret for his actions and a commitment to live differently, even if the scars of the past could never truly heal. Chucky's life after prison was one of quiet reflection and small attempts to make amends. While some believed his efforts showed genuine remorse, others remained skeptical, unable to forgive the pain he caused. His story, like the tragedy itself, remained a polarizing topic, but it also served as a reminder of the complexities of redemption and the lasting impact of choices made in moments of desperation. The tragedy of Lanny Roberto Kanga's murder left an indelible mark on Neptune Beach, but over time it also became a catalyst for meaningful change. The town, once shaken by the shocking crime, slowly rebuilt itself with a renewed focus on emotional well-being and community support. Residents realized that deeper conversations about mental health, family dynamics, and conflict resolution were essential to prevent such tragedies in the future. Local schools began integrating emotional intelligence and mental health education into their curriculums. Teachers organized workshops where students could learn to express their emotions, navigate personal challenges, and seek help when needed. These programs emphasized the importance of addressing struggles early, creating an environment where asking for support was encouraged rather than stigmatized. Community organizations also played a role in this transformation. Neighborhood centers offered free counseling sessions, support groups, and seminars for families. These efforts were not only a response to the Kanga case, but also a way to strengthen the town's sense of connection and responsibility to one another. Annual events in Lanny's memory became a cornerstone of this renewed sense of unity. Her artwork, displayed in public spaces, served as a reminder of her talent and the beauty she brought to the town. These gatherings often included discussions about mental health, open communication, and the importance of fostering strong family relationships. While the pain of the past could not be erased, the residents of Neptune Beach found ways to turn tragedy into a force for progress. Younger generations grew up hearing Lanny's story, not just as a tale of heartbreak, but as a lesson in empathy and the need for understanding one another. Through these initiatives, the community ensured that her legacy was not defined by her death, but by the positive changes her life inspired. In the years that followed, Neptune Beach became a symbol of resilience, a place where a painful chapter in its history was transformed into a commitment to compassion and care. The lessons learned from Lanny's story continued to shape the town, leaving behind a legacy of hope, growth, and a stronger community united by the shared goal of building a better future.